Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk about why diets suck. Now, the word diet can have two meanings. It can mean the food that you regularly eat, your diet, like a panda eats a diet of bamboo leaves or whatever, or it can mean going on a diet. And when I use the word here, that's what I mean, going on a diet to lose weight. Going on a diet to lose weight sucks. I don't have to be a psychic to guess that you've probably tried to diet before and it didn't work. Either you didn't lose weight or you did and then you regained it. I can say this very confidently because the statistics are overwhelming. The vast majority of people who go on a diet don't lose any weight. And of the minority who do lose weight, the vast majority of them will regain it all, and often even more, in a relatively short amount of time. Here's just a quick overview of the case against diets. 35.7%. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, 35.7% of Americans are obese. Not overweight, obese. That's about 250 million people who would love to change their bodies. What happens when they do try to change their bodies? 95%. According to a document from the University of Colorado Boulder, 95% of diet attempts fail. In other words, 19 out of every 20 people who go on a diet will either fail to lose any weight at all, or they'll gain back all the weight they lost within 2 to 3 years at most. But it gets worse. 83%. According to the researchers at UCLA, 83% of dieters not only gain back all the weight that they lost, within 2 years, they actually gain back more weight than they had in the first place. 5 years later, more than half had gained an extra 11 pounds. 97%. In another study published by the International Journal of Obesity, 97% of people who lose weight regained it within a few short years. 99.5%. Arthur Frank, the medical director of George Washington University's weight management program, reports, out of 200 people who diet, only 10 lose weight, and out of those 10, only 1 keeps it off. That's a failure rate of 99.5%. I could go on. There are many studies like this, but you get the idea. Diets just don't work. Sorry if you love diets. You probably don't. But the fact is, diets are worse than bad, worse than ineffective. They're hopeless. Now here's the good news. First of all, this means that you are not alone. You're not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you. You don't have a slow metabolism. You aren't addicted to sugar. You probably don't have a weird hormonal issue causing your weight gain. The truth is, you didn't fail at your diet. Your diet failed you. Dieting to lose weight is kind of like going into a garden and trimming the weeds. First of all, it's hard work. And it will work, sort of. It will make your garden look weed-free for a while. But the problem is the weeds are still there under the surface, and their roots are still choking the life out of your garden. The only way to really solve this problem is to pull those bastards out by the roots. A UCLA researcher named Tracy Mann did a study on the long-term effects of diets. And what did he have to say? Quote, diets do not lead to sustained weight loss or health benefits for the majority of people. That sounds pretty bad, but it actually gets worse. Because when you look at the data, it actually appears that diets lead to weight gain consistently for almost everybody. Another UCLA researcher working with Tracy Mann said, several studies indicate that dieting is actually a consistent predictor of future weight gain. You're probably wondering, WTF? How can a diet that's meant to help you lose weight actually make you gain it? It seems counterintuitive, but multiple studies show that diets actually make us eat more. That might sound crazy, but it's true, and it's verified in multiple published studies. A 1999 study by Janet Polivy and Peter Herman found that dieters were more likely to overindulge than non-dieters. The reason is because when dieters go off their diet, they go way off their diet and binge. And the reason why is because dieting leads to obsessing about food, binge eating, and emotional suffering. People who go on a diet become, quote, anxious, apathetic, and withdrawn. And they, quote, lost ambition and a sense of humor, experienced, quote, decreased concentration and sex drive, and showed, quote, signs of depression. Dieting also leads to a cycle in which we binge and then we feel guilty. That makes us try to diet even harder, which makes us even more likely to binge because we're trying to be too strict with ourselves. That is the definition of a vicious cycle. And this cycle happens to people, even to people who are not overweight. For example, one study took men who were perfectly well-adjusted and healthy and had normal body weight. They followed these men. They even followed these men around for several months before the study, just to make sure that these guys had no issues around eating. Then they put these guys on a 1,600 calorie diet. And what do you think happened? These men developed body image issues and they started to feel fat. They ended up with emotional hunger binges that were ravenous, even after the study was over. According to Josie Spinardi in her excellent book, How to Have Your Cake and Your Skinny Jeans Too, which is a great book, this study would no longer be allowed because the APA would consider it unethical and inhumane. And Josie has a few more reasons why diets don't work. 1, diets cause cravings, and they make you obsess over food because your brain thinks that food is scarce. 2, diets make you less in control of your eating. 3, diets cause stress. By putting your neocortex or your thinking brain in charge of food, it makes every meal a difficult and stressful decision. One study showed that dieters feel anxiety, stress, and guilt from just looking at a picture of chocolate. They didn't even eat any. Just looking at chocolate caused feelings of anxiety and stress and guilt. 4, diets increase stress-related eating. 5, diets cause you to eat uncontrollably when you, quote, go off your diet. And finally, 6, diets don't solve the real issue. On top of that, I'd like to add a few basic, obvious reasons why diets don't work. They're hard. People like to eat. Nobody likes to feel hungry. And you eat all the time. Think about this. If you eat 3 meals a day, plus, say, 1 to 2 snacks, let's call that eating 5 times a day, just to give it sort of a round number. That's 35 times a week, or 1,820 meals a year. That means that if you want to lose weight and keep it off for the next 10 years, that's 18,200 times that you have to say no thank you to pizza and have a chicken breast salad instead. That, my friend, is a lot of choices. It's just about impossible to be good that consistently. But now here's the good news. Yay! Even though diets don't work, it is possible to lose weight. In fact, not only can you lose weight, you can completely and radically transform your body. And you know this is true because you've seen it. You've read the success stories. You've seen the before and after pictures. You've seen people on TV lose weight. You probably know someone who lost a lot of weight. I know it's possible because I did it. And so did my brother. So how did these people do it? And more importantly, how do you do it? The truth is, as we've learned in this video, that nobody can stick to a diet forever. So in order to lose weight and keep it off, the trick is to make your diet stick to you. And you do that by taking the food decisions out of your neocortex, which is the thinking part of your brain, and putting those food decisions back where they belong in the habitual part of your brain. First, though, what we have to do is we have to change that habitual part of your brain. We have to rewire it with lean, healthy habits that help you lose weight and achieve a lean, sexy figure naturally. This is possible because of something called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is a fancy word, but it means something very simple. It means that you can change your brain. As we develop more and more sophisticated brain imaging studies, we are learning that it's possible to physically change the way your brain is wired. Your brain has neural pathways or brain circuits, and the stronger a pathway is, the more likely you are to engage in the behavior that pathway leads to. But by creating new neural pathways that lead to different behaviors, in this case, healthier behaviors, you'll become more likely to eat right. And the more you do that, the more that the old neural pathways that led to overeating behaviors, those are going to fade away over time. Neuroplasticity is important because the truth is, and I believe this in my core, that you will never achieve lasting weight loss without it. I believe that the people who have lost weight and kept it off for a long time did so by changing and rewiring their brain, whether they realized it or not. So, the next question is, how do you rewire your brain for permanent weight loss? Well, the answer should be pretty simple. By buying all of my courses. I'm kidding, of course. You definitely don't have to buy all my courses, although I would recommend it. But to rewire your brain, we basically want to focus on something that I call the pillars of neuroplasticity. Okay? And this is kind of the pyramid that leads to change. And at the bottom of this pyramid is your beliefs, okay? So this kind of underlies everything. This is what you believe about yourself and what you believe about food and diet and exercise. These are your beliefs. They're usually unconscious, and they have a huge effect over the way that you think and the way that you act. Sitting on top of your beliefs are your habits, and these are the things that you habitually do without thinking about it, okay? So if you tend to, come home from work and open a bag of chips, that's one habit. If you tend to stop on your way home from work and go to the gym, that's a different habit. In both cases, if it's a habit, it doesn't require willpower. It's just something that you're in the habit of doing, okay? Willpower is on top of habits, okay? Because willpower is something that you can use to change your habits, but it requires effort. Okay, so if you're in the habit of getting home and eating a bag of chips, then it's going to take willpower to do something other than that. Okay, you're going to have to consciously force yourself to not get those chips. And if you want to go to the gym, you're just going if you want to go to the gym instead, it's going to take willpower for you to change your route and to drive to the gym instead of driving straight home. Okay, now over time, if you use willpower to encourage a new behavior, that behavior will become a habit, and it'll kind of sink down into your subconscious, and that's really the goal. But the point is that willpower is pretty high on the pyramid, so it's not something that you can use on a daily basis to change your body or to change your brain. So. Finally, on top of your willpower is the specific things that you do, okay? So in this case, the foods you eat and the exercises you do. And if you notice, the actual actions, the foods and the exercise, are at the very tippity top. So what most people do is they'll start by trying to change the foods that they eat and the exercises they do, when really what you need to do is you need to start at the bottom, and you need to change your beliefs to make sure that you've got the proper beliefs that'll support this whole pyramid. And then you want to start working on using your willpower to create the habits that are going to support the new body that you want. And then that's going to naturally lead to you making the right choices as far as your food and your exercise. Okay, now before we go, I have one more little tidbit to share. Have you ever heard of a focusing illusion? A focusing illusion is when you focus on something that you want, and it turns out that you are focusing on the wrong thing. So here's a few examples. One example, and this is a true story. A football team once signed a quarterback, but they were worried that this quarterback had a tendency to throw too many interceptions. So they put a clause in his contract that penalized him severely for every interception he threw. They thought that this would cut down on his interceptions. And it makes sense, right? I mean, logically, if you just kind of glance over that, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's a good idea. So what happened? What happened was the quarterback stopped throwing the ball. Instead of making a potentially risky throw, he would just tuck the ball and run, or take a sack, or throw an incompletion, or run out of bounds. In other words, he never took a risk. He only threw passes that were really super safe. And as a result, he was a horrible quarterback. Okay, so the team was trying to cut down on his interceptions, but they focused way too much on the interceptions without accounting for the fact that being a good quarterback is more than just not making interceptions. It is also, taking risks is part of this position. Another great example is computer programmers. Some companies pay their programmers by how many lines of code they write. Okay, so the more lines of code you write, the more money you get in these companies if you're a programmer. And companies thought that this would make their programmers more productive by giving them an incentive to write more code. And again, if you just think about it real quick, yeah, it kind of makes sense. But instead, what happened was programmers started writing really long code. They added in extra loops and calls and functions and all sort of technical programmer stuff. But really, they weren't being more productive. They were actually being less efficient. And by using more lines of code to accomplish the same thing, they created inefficient code, which results in software and programs that are slow. They don't run as quickly. So these companies focused way too much on the wrong thing, total lines of code, without taking into effect that not every line of code is equal. If you can write one line of code that does the same thing as 10 other lines of code, it's better to write the one line of code that does it really quickly than it does to write 10 lines of sloppy code. So there are tons more examples of this, of focusing illusions in the book. The Myth of the Garage is one that I like a lot. I think it's free on Amazon. Here's one more. People in the Midwest who have cold winters tend to think that people in California, for example, are happier. But they're not. The Midwesterners are just focusing on the wrong thing, the weather. Okay? I mean, yeah, great weather is really nice and it puts you in a better mood, but happiness has to do with so many different things in your life, and the weather is just one small thing. Okay? And the reason why I bring this topic up, the reason why I'm talking about focusing illusions right now, is because weight loss is full of them. And many of these focusing illusions sound really sexy and tempting. Things like carbs and cardio, raspberry ketones, and green coffee extract. Okay? But these are the wrong things to focus on. The reason why the course that you are watching right now is so powerful is because it gives you the right things to focus on. Things like your beliefs, your habits, your goals, your emotions, your social support, your willpower. These are the things that are important day after day in all the decisions that you make that lead to the body that you have, okay? And they're the things that we're going to have to change in order to change that body. So get excited because you have got a whole lean lifetime ahead of you, and today is the first day of it.